Paris 2009. After 25 years of private water administration, the city is preparing to take back the supplying of water, giving it back completely to Eau de Paris.
Step by step, we want to take back control over the water in Paris. This means the control returns to City Hall. We have established examination committees and have developed studies. Already in 2003 and 2004, we renegotiated the contracts to reclaim the investment reserves from the operators. The chief executives of Veolia and Suez didn't take it too well, as we learned from the press. They labeled the recommunalization as a mistake.
In this French newspaper, they stated the following on the topic. Proclio, the chief executive of Veolia, called the mayor of Paris and yelled furiously, without the contract in Paris, Veolia wouldn't get any assignments abroad anymore. The topic recommunalization didn't leave Suez cold either.
I don't think one should always put the public administration in opposition with a private service. In reality today there are only public-private partnerships. And it would be good if you would help us implement this political direction of sustainability. This is about a global cultural revolution, and this is where we need you to be. But not in a debate, I'm sorry, which basically doesn't make any sense. Water needs money.
Okay? No water makes money, no.
Water is common property, a basis for existence. For this reason, it should be administered by the public. With the changeover to a single public water administrator in Paris, we will be able to save a minimum of approximately 30 million euros annually. A large portion of that would have been the operator's profit. Thereby, the complete generated profit will flow back into the supplying of water. That money will not be used for anything else. That's an important point. This way we can keep the price for water stable and still assure a high level of investment and service. Other than that, the public administration of water, through the provisions, allows for a long-term asset management. We can then structure our investments according to the requirements, since they are based on the life expectancy of the commodities. We are not kept within the boundaries of a private delegation contract, limited to a period of 5, 10, or 20 years.
Parce que nous ne sommes pas arrêtés par un contrat de délégation de 5, de 10, de 15 ou de 20 ans.
This well is over 200 years old and still functioning. It is uninteresting for a private operator to invest in a centuries-old structure. Their contracts are limited to 30 years, but investments within the area of water are only profitable after 30 to 60 years. That is why private investors refrain from investing any capital of their own into channels. It is simply not profitable. A public operator does not have these restraints. He can plan in decades and make long-term commitments to assure that the resource water is used sparsely and provided with optimal protection.
The protection of larger bodies of water is a big challenge. This assures that the water doesn't have to be so heavily treated, which is costly, and thus will always be a remedial measure. Ecological protection makes more sense, of course.
In an article in the magazine Dimanche, severe losses of water in the water networks were being reprimanded. The loss of water is drastically higher in the privately operated networks compared to the ones operated by the public. In France, Veolia puts on average only a third of the budget financed by the water consumers towards pipe maintenance. If a pipe bursts, it's categorized as renewal, for which the consumer is charged extra. A private operator has no interest in repairing leakages, since only what's being used is calculated. Why then save water? Confronted with the growing problems of pollution and water quality, one focuses primarily on a kind of healing. The technologies that are being developed are even more complex and cleverly refined. This is of course interesting for companies like Veolia and Suez. That's why they continuously develop new technologies. Ultrafiltration, nanofiltration, or reverse osmosis. But this is running directly into a dead end, because there will always be more pollution, and already today, all of this is extremely expensive. It would be much more important to reduce pollution at the source, through, for example, the protection of the water resources, or switching to biological agriculture.
To
reach the goal of clean water, there mustn't be any private interests involved, due to the fact that treating wastewater is in their interest. We really have to give the complete water administration, the supply networks, as well as production, over to the public authorities.
En régie publique, l'ensemble de la gestion de l'eau, aussi bien la distribution que la production. Voilà.
Stop that thief! Did you know that Brest has one of the highest prices for water in all of France? Especially the first cubic meters. It was privatized 25 years ago. The contract runs out in 2012, and we are running a campaign to return to a public water administration. Several contracts are running out in 2012. All the larger cities in Finistère, Quimper, Morlaix, Landerneau and Brest are connected by a network with the other cities in Finistère in order to put pressure on the public authorities. We want to implement the return to public administration. Is the recommunalization in the interest of the public and the consumer? I would answer this question with a yes.
The South German city, Munich.
It's common knowledge amongst the public and within politics why we have the highest quality water. Of course, it is in part due to our beneficial position right at the foot of the Alps, but it's also due to the fact that our city utilities are cultivating the largest ecological agricultural area in Europe within our water resource area. And this is because our public authorities keep future generations in mind when making plans that span decades for highest water quality care. Private operators, on the other hand, have to declare their profits in the next quarterly statement and gear everything towards satisfying the shareholders, analysts, and the rating agencies. That's why we defend a public control of the water market.
Verteidigen wir den Wassermarkt in öffentlicher Hand.
Privatization is only appealing on the first day, when you cash in the proceeds. But then you realize you don't have any influence, no say in the matter. You are in the hands of the investment decisions of distant corporate headquarters. You can't influence the prices, neither the biological quality, You've signed off as local council.
Man hat eigentlich als Gemeinderat abgedankt.
Brussels, the capital of Belgium.
Here we have an example that hopefully will teach a few lessons and make the public sector of all of Europe think. I am definitely willing to discourage anyone, anywhere, from carelessly venturing into a collaboration in which private partners are given so much free rein.
The water supply in Brussels was 100% run by the community until 2001. Then a Viola daughter company, Aquarius, were commissioned the North Brussels wastewater refinery plant as a public-private partnership because of their new technique to dispose of sewage sludge.
From here you have a view on that very new and exclusive system, an Atos system.
Through this system, the sewage sludge is being reduced. A ton of sludge turns into a 50-kilo sack of sand. We are naturally very proud to have something so new, beautiful and big. The plant was officially opened on the 11th of March in 2008. Our king attended the opening. Having such a great new station was considered an important matter.
Das war eine wichtige Sache, so ein schönes neues Station zu haben.
They closed the 3 collectors in front of the plant and routed the wastewater for more than 1 million citizens straight into the waterways, into the Seine and the waterways downriver.
From an ecological point of view, this was an absolute catastrophe. The sewage treatment plant remained out of service for about 10 days, which is disastrous. 10 days! 10 days without wastewater treatment. Of course, technical problems could have occurred on a publicly operated plant. However, we would have never allowed such a drastic stop of the plant the way the private operators did. And that's the main point, that the public was faced with actions that had already taken place through the abrupt shutdown of the plant by the private operators.
The epuration has always been working. It's the treatment of the mud that did stop working as it should do, and that was then done in containers and then is sent it to Germany.
From what I hear, that's an enormous amount of trucks every month. They had problems with this system for months. Yes, and now they apparently claim they found the solution. But this solution would be very expensive.
la solution à leurs problèmes, mais ce sont des solutions qui leur coûtent très très cher.
That's why this whole conflict is now revolving around the question, who is to pay for the improvement of the plant?
Aquarius has already requested an additional 40 million.
At the moment, what they are doing is they are trying to restart it. So they are making tests. This is why the Seine is still a bit wet and very black and stinky. It shouldn't be like that. So it's just on the process. So for the moment, the worst case scenario would be that this whole concept cannot work at all.
Atos is absolutely in the experimental stage. They performed tests, but on a really small scale in Toulouse. That's where the formula was tested.
This article makes some very, very serious and detailed accusations. That, for example, the call to proposals has been changed in the middle. so that it would allow an experimental technology such as the Athos process to compete. Another claim they make is that Veolia made a lot of pressures through the French state, through different lobbies they had, through different networks they had, that they invited a whole bunch of politicians and high officials of the administration on big yachts in Saint-Tropez just before the selection. So the man says, "Oh, so how do you find it?" And the other one is, "Oh, it's very nice. This aftertaste of corruption gives it a very, very pure taste."
Je vais vous lire
The Regional General Accounting Office of Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur, who checked the accounts of one of Veolia's branch offices, found the following.
une filiale de Veolia. Et voici ce qu'il a trouvé dedans.
One overnight with dinner and breakfast in Mauguin for a manager of a water branch, 4,140 francs. Participation in a cantonal district election campaign, 10,000 francs. Trips to Malta and Sardinia for a business partner not contracted, 170,000 francs. A stay in St. James Club in Paris for a delegate from Varest, 5,120 francs. Fees for a lawyer from the Alpes-Maritimes, for no given reason, 270,000 francs. Two bills from a partner association currently involved in a legal procedure, 1,362,929 francs. Travel expenses and a stay in Cardiff for 4 persons, 2 of which for an executive manager of the local authority of Varest, 32,024 francs. This is stated by the Regional General Accounting Office, so this is what we pay with our water bills.
Favors, but also payments of significant sums to influential decision makers. The South French Montpellier.
I find the management of water in Montpellier disgusting. There have been cases of corruption and of people taking advantage of the situation. The city council granted Veolia, formerly Compagnie Générale des Eaux, an operating leasing agreement in 1989. In 1994, a congressional investigation committee was established, which then sentenced Compagnie Générale des Eaux for corruption and for bribery. The Compagnie paid 8 million francs to a department within reign of the Communist Party to force them to vote for the operating lease agreement, which they did. The briber was sentenced. Those bribed were not.
Mais les corrompus n'ont pas été condamnés, ni même embêtés. Voilà.
Despite the conviction of those responsible at the time from Veolia in Montpellier, Jean-Dominique Deschamps, the management of water is still in the hands of the corporation. But also in the universities does Veolia, along with Suez, play a significant part.
Suez holds a professorship at the School for Water and Forest Management. Also in university too, soon another professorship will be granted to Veolia. A Veolia professorship with the task to teach and develop research areas, presumably within their field of expertise and competency, water. This is all a blatant sign of how strongly meshed together science and the economical interests of the operators and other financial interests really are. Maybe it's not so clever that Monsieur Bichou, the regional manager of the southern district of Veolia, is at the head of the center of competency. Equally as inept, perhaps, is naming the fusion of the local water science companies Suelia, as if it were a merging of Suez and Veolia.
Comme si c'était une contraction de Suez et de Veolia. Il me semble que ce pôle de recherche...
Hence, it is conceivable that these research centers increasingly, if not solely, develop into a utilitarian science, obediently serving the operators.
plus et seulement de recherche-développement au service des opérateurs de services.
Qu'on corrompe ou qu'on donne dans un système quelques formes de subventions.
If you meddle in this corrupt system, or give grants, credits, or gifts, then you have to very generously spread your money. Even environmental organizations, even those I really value, such as French Nature Environment, are being generously financed by Veolia Propreté, or Actions Against Hunger, the Red Cross, La Solidarité, and others. Even in the Catholic aid organization Secours Catholique, the one responsible for issues regarding water is a former chief of staff at Veolia. On every level, we're up against a complete overlapping of roles. And when politicians lose an election, they get hired by Suez or Veolia.
They hire people with the power to influence the commissioning of official public assignment contracts or influence those members of Congress who create the laws. For example, deciding on alteration requests, ultimately allowing them access to construction assignment contracts, such as the adaptation of the canal system to newer standards, things that are immediately beneficial to them. They are creating supply and demand themselves with the help of government officials and their lobbyists.
Brussels, the European Union Parliament, and the attempt to unravel the widely ramified network through which Veolia is affecting the European Union.
The lobbying of Veolia Environnement in Brussels in water, basically you can say it is important to have a very, very wide and diversified lobbying network to be efficient. What is important is to have the same kind of message delivered through as many channels as possible. So you can use think tanks to organize debates. You can use general business lobbies. You can use specialized water lobbies, such as those ones. And you can use global bodies, such as the World Water Forum, etc. For example, Veolia is dominating one body which is very closely advising DG Research about what kind of projects, research projects, it should fund in the 5 coming years. They are the main funders, I think they are the biggest funders of an entity which is called the Water Supply and Sanitation Technology Platform. So this means basically Veolia is influencing the Commission on research projects it will apply to afterwards. So basically it will get the European Commission funding project it has asked to be funded.
The privatization waves in Europe were never brought on by a large public discourse, but always by a sudden court decision made by the European Supreme Court of Justice, with the intention to force entry into one market or other, or a guideline by the European Commission. And that's why I say, be awake is the rule of thumb. The corporations who wish to break into these business areas continue to exist, and they are constantly rattling the gate of entry to these
Sie
markets.
rütteln ständig wieder am Tor des Marktzugangs.
The Speaker for the European Union Commission opens the declaration on the 19th of May 2009. Water is a commodity like everything else. Thereby, the intention of the European Union Commission was affirmed to open up the market for private firms by obligating the public utilities to request proposals.
The system today is a true financial dictatorship, and the water is held hostage by this financial dictatorship.
Istanbul, Turkey. The biggest lobby event in the world concerning water, the World Water Forum, is held here in 2009. Initiated by the World Water Council, a governing body named by the water corporations Veolia and Suez, the World Bank, and some other supporters. Along with the self-proclaimed Global Water Organization, ministers, highly influential politicians, UN representatives, and the big water business come together under the roof of the private corporations.
The problem is, will we in 20 years' time have enough water for everyone to access? And how do we assure that everyone will have access to water? This is the difficulty discussed throughout this forum. Because being able to get water is the dignity of men and women.
And they came together in 1997 and they set up these forums every 3 years. And at first we all, I think a lot of us thought, well, this will be a good opportunity to really talk about the world crisis. But it became very clear, very fast, that this is a big trade show for the water corporations. And it's a way of giving themselves legitimacy when they say, well, we have the answers to the world's water crisis. And so when they put on a forum like this with thousands and thousands of people, it looks like the whole world's here and everybody agrees, and that's the optic they want. That's what they need. That's what they need to look like. But it's a lie. It's just a big house of cards. They elected themselves. The Lords of Water just decided, me, why don't you, I'll be chair, you be vice chair. Oh, okay, I guess that's democratic. That's privatized by any name. What Suez and Veolia say is, well, we're not doing that anymore. What we're doing now is public-private partnerships, and that is the public keeps control, but we do the delivery, and we're so efficient, and we do such a great job. It's just gobbledygook. It's the same thing. Private delivery on a for-profit basis is exactly the same as if you're running it. The government signs the contract and hands it over to the corporation. That's privatized by any name. If it's walks like a duck and talks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck.
Maud Barlow is a participant at the Alternative Opposition Forum, to which numerous people affected and critics of the privatization of water have traveled from all over the world.
In 1999, Veolia Environment, then trading as Vivendi, obtained a contract to manage water in Nairobi. And then the government of Kenya would guarantee 15% of the revenue from water would go to Veolia. And they would have to increase the cost of water every year by 40%. Cost of water became expensive, and a lot of people were not able to access water anymore and had their water disconnected. They had also proposed that the city council had to lay off 3,500 workers and to hire 45 new experts, people from France. The cost of hiring this very small group of people for Veolia was going to cost more than the city was paying for 3,500 Kenyans, the government was forced to reverse the contract with Veolia. That means from July 2001, the Veolia wasn't operating the water anymore. The problem with reversing the contract, of course, we know is that we don't know how much money the government had to pay to reverse the contract. But we know that shortly after that, the government had to borrow money from the World Bank.
The success of the World Water Forum disturbs those who have run out of things to say. We will continue. We will continue just as we have since years and continue fighting for those who have no access to water.
Veolia and Suez came to the United States and they said that privatization would be the wave of the future, and they aggressively went after large cities. They fire half the staff. That's where the economic efficiency comes from that they claim they have. Prices usually double.
Suez immediately demanded an increase of the water price of 700% compared to the public utilities. Afterwards, all political fractions, churches, intellectuals, and also the army agreed to a people's referendum in order to put into Uruguay's constitution the human right to access water. The referendum was accepted with 64.7%. Suez finally left the country in September 2006. They also had to leave Argentina and after that Bolivia as well.
También se fue de Bolivia.
Buenos Aires, Atlanta, Cochabamba, Johannesburg, Stockton, and Felton are only the most famous examples of the successful fight for recommunalization. The reclaiming of the management of water back into public hands is turning into a worldwide trend. Italy, for example, here it seems a national referendum is successful in preventing the privatization of water intended by Berlusconi, head of the government. Or Germany. Having already had experience with privatization, recommunalization is the trend. As for example in Stuttgart, here the city council decided, with a large majority, to recommunalize the management of water, run by the Veolia-owned EDF, as the result of a civil referendum. In the capital Berlin as well, also through a civil referendum, here Veolia and RWE had taken over the management through confidential contracts.
Have you heard about our civil referendum? You are paying for what the corporations are taking.
Dass weiterhin die höchsten Wasserpreise hier in Berlin gezahlt werden, durch die Teilprivatisierung, durch Geheimverträge. Unterstützen Sie das Volksbegehren zur Offenlegung von Geheimverträgen.
The most impressive recommunalization wave is, however, in the home country of the corporations Veolia and Suez. Back in Paris, 2010.
Voila, now we have a publicly run water administration in Paris, after having entrusted it to Veolia and Suez for 25 years. All of the responsibilities regarding water are back in public hands. This is a historic decision for the water management service.
In 2/3 of the cities in France, contracts with the private operators Suez and Veolia are simultaneously running out. This is the chance to return to public administration. Alongside of Paris, many other cities will use this chance. Bordeaux, Toulouse, Montpellier, Brest and Marseille, and now also Lille. We've had enough of the eternal price increases. We've had enough of the corruption dominating the private water market. We've had enough of the lack of transparency in water politics. The return to public administration is now a possibility.